Hello viewers, this is Wagada now taking you through the story for O-level mathematics. So in this video, I'm going to go through a paper of UNEB Math Paper 2 of 2018. So this video is suitable for students in Senior 4. So just start with section A, and section A of question 1. So question 1 says, express the recurring decimal of 1.633 recurring in the form A over B, where A and B are integers. So know that word, integers. So in other words, they want you to express it into a fraction. So first of all, you shall say let x be the given recurring decimal. So to shift this decimal point from here to here, where the recurring decimal starts from, we shall multiply by 10 on both sides. Therefore 10x will be equal to this given recurring decimal multiplied by 10, and when I multiply, the decimal will shift from here to here. That's why you see here 16.333 recurring. So next is to subtract the 2. So 10x minus x, I'll come up with 9x, and 16.333 recurring minus 1.633 recurring will give me 14.7. So next is to make x the subject by dividing both sides by 9 to come up with 14.7 over 9. But remember, they told us that both a and b must be integers. So this 9 is an integer, but 14.7 is not an integer. Therefore, we have to shift this decimal point from here to here by multiplying both numerator and denominator by 10. So when I multiply, I come up with that. There in the end, I'll come up with 147 over 90. So with this, I will reduce by dividing up and down by 3. So when I divide 147 by 3, I'll come up with 49, and 90 by 3 will come up with 30. Therefore, the given recurring decimal is equal to 49 over 30. Therefore, A was 49 and B was 30. So basically that's what they wanted. This is an improper fraction, and we should not change it to a mixed fraction because the form they want is in this form, numerator and denominator. So let's see how much can be awarded. Now this M1 was for multiplying to shift the the decimal point, and this M1 was for subtraction, and this M1 was for division, and this A1 for the improper fraction. So this question was on numerical concepts, and it required the candidates to express recurring decimal as an improper fraction, not mixed fraction. It should be improper fraction, and apply the knowledge of integers. The question was very popular but poorly done. Very popular means it appears frequently in the past papers, but it was poorly done. Why? Because many candidates could not identify the recurring pattern or the digits in order to convert to the decimal. So some candidates thought that even 6 is recurring, but it was only 3 which was recurring. So the idea is that teachers should put more emphasis on different patterns of recurring decimals. Sometimes there are 2 digits which are recurring, or 1 digit which is recurring, or 3. So teachers should also encourage learners to continuously revise topics covered in lower second. So as you prepare for your UNEB, you should make sure that you don't ignore what you covered in lower second. Lower second remains senior 1 and senior 2 work. Okay, so that was question 1. Now we shall go to question 2. Question 2 says, a line passes through points 3k and 27 and has a gradient of 12. Find the value of k. So what you need to know is that we shall first get the gradient using these 2 points and equate it to this given gradient. So using these 2 points, remember gradient is change in y over change in x. So change in y will be 7 minus k, and change in x will be 2 minus 3. So the order is very important. So that will be m, and therefore that m will be our 12. So m is the gradient which was given, and it is here, and this is what is here. So next is to simplify. 2 minus 3 is negative 1, and next I'll cross multiply. So negative 1 times 12, I'll come up with negative 12, and this side will be, I remain with 7 minus k. So when I take 7 this side, I'll come up with negative 12 minus 7 equal to negative k. Therefore, negative 19 is equal to negative k. When I divide both sides by negative 1, I'll come up with k being equal to 19. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this substitution, and M1 for equating, and this M1 for cross multiplying, and A1 for the output. Now the question was on coordinates and equations of parallel lines, and it required the candidates to apply the knowledge of coordinates and gradient of parallel lines to form and solve equation. Remember, parallel lines are the same gradient. So the question was very popular, meaning it appears more frequently in the previous past papers, but general well done. So most students got it correct. However, some candidates did not know how to find the gradient of a straight line. So gradient is changing y over changing x. Some candidates were interchanging, and they used changing x over changing y. Other candidates could not identify the relationship between parallel lines, so they could not know that parallel lines are the same gradient. So advice to teachers is that teachers should stress the concept of gradients of parallel lines, and learners should be taught by use of graphs and other methods. So both graphs methods should be used, graph work and also calculations, so that learners are able to discover the relations by sight. So that was question 2. Now we shall go to question 3. So question 3 says, calculate the volume of a hemisphere whose radius is 4.9 centimeters. So first of all, a hemisphere, you have to know that a hemisphere is half of a sphere. So volume of a sphere is 4 over 3 pi r cubed. Therefore, because a hemisphere is half of a sphere, that's why I multiply by a half to get the volume of a hemisphere. Out that we shall now substitute for pi and for r. So pi is 22.7 and r is 4.9, but remember it is cubed, so it will be 4.9 times 4.9 times 4.9. So when I use the calculator and multiply all these ones, I'll come up with my volume being equal to 246.503 centimeters cubed. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for formula and M1 for substituting for pi. So there are two values of pi. You can either use this fraction, which is 22 over 7, or use the decimal, which is 3.14. Then another M1 for substituting for r. So r times r times r, that is another M1. Then A1 for output. So using a calculator to get this final answer is how you can get that A1. So the question was on three-dimensional geometry and mensuration. It required the candidates to find the volume of a hemisphere. The question was popularly attempted but poorly done. So this means that most students attempted this question, but very many who attempted got it wrong. So the reason is because some candidates did not seem to know the formula for volume of a sphere and hence a hemisphere. So for you to easily know the volume of a hemisphere, you must know the volume of a sphere. They exhibited little understanding of a sphere. So I advise to teachers that teachers need to comprehensively teach learners all the areas of mensuration of solids using models. So models are very vital so that learners can appreciate the shapes. So now we shall go to question 4. Question 4 says that given that set A is that and set B is that, find number of members of in A intersection B complement. So in this case, you can use a Venn diagram or you can list down. So we shall use the method of listing down. So first of all, we shall list A intersection B. A intersection B means that members in both A and B. If you look at this, you realize that 2 is common in both, and also 3 is common in both, and also 5 is common in both. What does that mean? It means that 2, 3, 5 are the members in A intersection B. What about members in A union B? So A union B, you list all the members without repeating any. So you don't repeat the members, just if a member appears twice, you write it once. For example, this 2 appears twice, it appears here and here, but when you are writing the union, you only write once. So when you do that, you have come up with all these values. Therefore, what does that mean? It means that A intersection B complement will be those which are in A union B but not in A intersection B. So when you do that, what you shall need to do is to remove this 2, remove this 3, and remove this 5. So the remaining members will be the members of A intersection B complement. So there is this 1, there is this 6, there is this 7, and all these values are also here. So that with that we have listed the members in A intersection B complement. But remember, they want a number of members. What does that mean? It means that you count them. So you shall count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Therefore, you shall come and write the number of members is equal to 9 members. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 will be for listing members in A intersection B, B1 for listing members in A union B, and B1 for listing members in A intersection B complement, and another B1 for number of members of A intersection B complement. So in this case, even if you use the Venn diagram to approach this solution, it will still be correct. So the question was on sets, and candidates were required to find complement of intersection of sets. The question was very popular and well done. However, some candidates seemed not to be knowledgeable of set notation, so they complement. Some students didn't know what it meant and how to get it. So advise that teachers should teach set theory and all its components. Then they should also encourage learners to do constant revision. So you as a student preparing for UNEB, you must do constant revision. Don't wait for last minute revision. Do constant revision. So that was question 4. Now we shall go to question 5. Question 5 says the diagram below shows a line which cuts the y-axis and P and the x-axis at Q. So this is P. You have to know the coordinate of P, which is 0, 5, and also the coordinate of Q, which is 5, 0. So when you know those coordinates, you can easily answer the question, because they wanted you to determine the equation of the line. So here we shall say that now that we know 2 points on the line, we can get the gradient. So we shall come and say that gradient of the line will be equal to change in y over change in x. So change in y is, these are the y coordinates, so change in y will be 0 minus 5, and change in x will be 5 minus 0, which is that. So this gives me negative 5 and this gives me positive 5, and when I divide, I'll come up with negative 1 as my gradient. So I'm going to, so using that and that, so this is the general equation for a straight line, and what we want to get is the y-intercept. So there are 2 ways of getting the y-intercept. One is by substitution, another one is by sight or by inspection. So for example, we have to know that y-intercept is the y-coordinate of y where the line cuts the y-axis. For example, at this point, you realize that the curve cuts this line cuts the y-axis at this point, and the coordinate of y and the y-coordinate is 5. What does that mean? It means that C is equal to 5. However, If that one is not easy to know, there's another method is substitution. So what we are going to do, we choose one of the 2 points of these 2 points which you already know. We have point P and point Q, so I've decided to choose point P. So for point P, the x coordinate is 0 and y coordinate is 5. Therefore, I'm going to use that point and also use this. So I will substitute for x here, and substitute for y here, and substitute for m here. I think you realize that I'll be left with c only as the only unknown. So when I do that, I'm going to come up with that. So -1 times 0 is 0, meaning that c is equal to 5. So those are the 2 ways of getting the y-intercept. So you can either get it by inspection or by calculation. So now that I've got c and I know m, I can come and write that the required equation of the line is y equal to -1 x plus 5. So 5 comes from here, and this negative comes from this -1. So -1 times x, the same as -x. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So this m1 for substitution and a1 for getting the gradient. This m1 was for you to get this value of c, substitution to get c, or by inspection, as long as we see c there, they will give you this m1, and a1 for getting the required equation. So the question was on graphs, and candidates were required to identify the coordinates of the given points on the graph and use them to determine the equation of the line. The question was fairly attempted and well done. However, some candidates could not identify coordinates of the points on the line, so you must be able to read the coordinates on a given graph. You start with the x coordinate followed by the y coordinate. Then others failed to identify the given y-intercept to form the equation. So like I said, there are 2 ways of identifying the y-intercept, either by inspection or by substitution. So any of the 2 is okay. Whatever is simpler for you is what you choose. So advice to teachers is that teachers should teach all methods of getting equations of a straight line. So there are various methods when given 2 points, or when given a point and a gradient. So or when given a point and another parallel line. So there are various methods to get the equation of a straight line. So teachers must teach to learners all those methods. So that was question 5. Now we shall go to question 6. So question 6 says that if log of y base x is equal to 2 and x times y is equal to 27, find the values of x and y. So yeah, the first thing to do is to express this logarithm into index form by eliminating this logarithm. How do we eliminate? To eliminate, we shall say this x, which is the base, raised to the power 2, which is this side, will be equal to y. So when you write that, we shall say y is equal to x squared, which is that. So with that, we have eliminated logarithms and expressed it in index form. That means that now we have 2 equations, y equal to x squared, and another one which is xy equal to 27. Now these are 2 equations and they can be solved simultaneously. Now the easiest method is the method of substitution. I think you see this y can be substituted here. So where there is y, we shall put the x squared. That's why that x squared times x is equal to x cubed. Then also when you look at this 27 in index form is the same as 3 cubed. So we shall come and say x cubed is equal to 3 cubed. Now since these powers are the same, it means that they can cancel and you remain with x equal to 3. So you come and say x is equal to 3. So that was the value of x, but they also want the value of y. So for you to get the value of y, you have to remember that y is equal to x squared. Therefore, where there is x, you put 3 to come up with y equal to 9. So basically, that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So this M1 was for index form, and M1 for substitution, and A1 for the value of X, and A1 for the value of Y. So the question was on numerical concepts, and it required candidates to apply the laws of logarithms and indices to find the unknown values of X and Y. The question was very unpopular and poorly done. Unpopular means that it rarely appears in the previous past papers, and poorly done means that most candidates who attempted it got it wrong. So the weakness is because some candidates lacked knowledge of laws of logarithms and indices. So the advice that the topic of indices and logarithms requires special attention. So this is the advice to teachers and also to students as you are revising. Give special attention to indices and logarithms. Then teachers should teach logarithms from first principles using the laws of indices so that students can know the relationship between the two. That was question 6. Now we shall go to question 7. Question 7 says, Jane bought a TV set at shillings 450,000. She sold it at shillings 550,000. Calculate her percentage profit. So for you to calculate percentage profit, you must know the profit first. So profit first is equal to selling price minus buying price. So when I subtract, I'll come up with my profit as 100,000. So now that I know profit, I can come and say that percentage profit is equal to profit over the buying price, which will be 100 over 100,000 over 450,000 multiplied by 100. So to come up with percentage profit as 22.22%. So here we round off. There are many decimals recurring, but we need 2 decimal places for all levels. So that's why we wrote 22.22%. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So this M1 for subtraction and A1 for the output to get profit, M1 for substitution and A1 for output to get the required percentage. So the question was on business mathematics, and it required the candidates to calculate the percentage profit. The question was popular and well done. So popular means that it appears frequently in the previous past papers, and well done means that most students who attempted it got it correct. However, there are some candidates who were able to calculate profit, but when it came to calculating percentage profit, they used the wrong formula. So most candidates were saying percentage profit is equal to profit over selling price, where yet it's supposed to be profit over buying price multiplied by 100. So the advice is that teachers should emphasize the teaching of percentages in relation to business math. In other words, when you are teaching business math, you revise percentages also. So that was question 7. Now I shall go to question 8. Question 8 says, Mogisha, Kate, Okelo, and Zwa like the following types of food: matoke, rice, meat, and matoke respectively. So this word respectively, it means that they are in the same order. So Mogisha likes matoke, Kate likes rice, Okelo likes meat, and Zwa likes matoke. So part A says that list the elements of the domain and range of the relation likes. So likes means that this will be the first and like followed by this after the like, meaning this will form the domain and this will form the range. So you come here and say that the domain will be Mogisha, Kate, Okelo, and Zwa. What about range will be matoke, rice, and meat. I think we realize that matoke appears twice, but here we write it once. So if values are if a value appears more than once in the range, you only write a single value, you don't repeat values. So that was part A. Part B, they said draw an arrow diagram to illustrate the relations. So this is an arrow diagram, not a puppy diagram, a puppygram. So for an arrow diagram, we shall start with the domain and list all the members in the domain, followed by the range and list all the members in the range. After that, we shall look for the ration. So it's Mogisha who likes Matoke, meaning that here we shall join Mogisha to Matoke. So let's do that. With an arrow, it has to be there. Then Kate likes rice, so we shall join Kate to rice with an arrow. So let's do that. Then Okello likes meat, so we shall join Okello to meat with an arrow. So let's do that. And lastly, Zua likes Matoke, so we shall join Zua to Matoke with an arrow. So let's do that. So basically, that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for listing members in the domain and another B1 for the range. Then B1 for the 2 arrows on Matoke, another B1. So this is supposed to be B1, so for the arrows on rice and meat. So the question was on relations and mappings, and it required the candidates to identify the elements in the domain and range and draw an arrow diagram, note that word arrow diagram, to show their relation. So the question was popular and fairly well done. However, some candidates lacked knowledge of domain and range. Then others failed to differentiate between a papigram and an arrow diagram. So these two are different. A papigram is different from an arrow diagram. Therefore, the advisor teachers should emphasize the relationship between domain and range in arrow diagrams. And also teachers should teach the difference between arrow diagram and papigram and stress that point. So you must stress the difference between an arrow diagram and a papigram so that students may appreciate the difference between the two. So that was question 8. Now we shall go to question 9. So question 9 says that the length of each side of a tube is 2x centimeters. The surface area of the tube is 206 centimeters squared. Find the length of each side. So, well, first of all, you know that a tube, they told us that a tube, so for a tube all sides are equal, and a tube has 6 faces. It has 6 faces with all sides equal, meaning that, and here they told us that each side of a tube is 2x, meaning that s denoting the side of a tube is equal to 2x. Now because it has 6 faces and the area of each face is s squared, so the total surface area will now be 6s squared. But remember, we know s is equal to 2x, so we shall come and substitute. Where there is s, we shall put there 2x. And they told us that the total surface area is 206, so we shall come and put there 206 and equal the 2. Now next is open brackets. What you should realize that this power is on affects everything in the bracket. So 2 squared will be 4. Now 4 times 6 will give you 24. That is why you have here 24. Now this x squared is because of this x raised to the power 2 to come up with x squared. So that is where 24x squared is coming from. So after that we shall equate it to 216. Then next is to make x squared the subject by dividing both sides by 24. So when I divide 216 by 24, I'll come up with 9. Now next is to put square root on both sides. When I put square root on both sides, I'll come up with x being equal to 3 centimeters. But remember, they wanted the length of each side, and each side was 2x. Therefore, I'll come out so the length of each side will be equal to 2 times 3 to come up with 6 centimeters. So basically, that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 was for substitution, and M1 for opening brackets, and A1 for the value of x, and A1 for the length of each side. So the question was about three-dimensional geometry, and it required the candidates to use the knowledge of surface area of a tube to determine the length of its side. So the question was not popular and was poorly done. So not popular meaning it rarely appears in the previous past papers of UNEB, and poorly done means that those who attempted it didn't get it correct. A large number didn't get it correct. So weakness is that many candidates confused surface area with volume. Some of them were writing the formula for volume instead of surface area. And other candidates did not know the formula for surface area of a tube. Many of them were forging other formulas. So the advice that teachers should teach this topic using models. So models are very vital in this topic of three-dimensional geometry, and teachers should take note of that. So that was question 9. Now we shall go to question 10. So question 10 says that in the diagram below, OX is equal to X tilde. So this symbol down below X is what we call tilde, T-I-L-D-A, and represents that value is a vector. Then OY is equal to Y tilde and OZ is equal to 3OX. Express 2OY plus ZY in terms of X tilde and Y tilde. So this is the diagram. They want OY, 2OY plus ZY. So the good thing is that we know OY is equal to Y tilde, but OZ we don't know it, but ZY we don't know it. So for it to move from here to here, it is the same as move from Z to O plus O to Y. Therefore you come here and say that ZY is equal to ZO plus OY. But the good thing we know OZ. So what does that mean? It means that ZO is equal to negative OZ. So when you're interchanging these positions of O and Z, it implies that you also put a negative. Therefore ZO is the same as negative OZ. That's why you see this minus here. And we also know that OZ is equal to 3OX. So we shall come and substitute for OZ, which is now, that means that we now have OY minus 3OX. Now since we know OY and OX, we shall come and substitute. So that gives you Y tilde minus 3X tilde as my ZY. So now that I know ZY, I can come and get the required expression of 2OY plus ZY. So 2OY will be 2Y tilde and ZY will be equal to Y minus 3X Y tilde minus 3X tilde. When I open brackets, 2Y tilde plus Y tilde will give me 3Y tilde, and this minus 3X tilde will give me 3X tilde. So when I try to factorize out 3, I'll come up with 3 in brackets Y tilde minus X tilde. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 was for the root and A1 for the substitution, M1 for the root and A1 for substitution. So for the output, so this A1 can be given at this step. That means that even if you don't factorize out, you'll still get the 4 marks. So the question was on vector geometry and required the candidates to use the given position vectors and ratios to determine the unknown roots in terms of X tilde and Y tilde. So the question was unpopular and poorly done. Unpopular means that it rarely appears in the previous past papers, and poorly done means that most of the students who attempted it got it wrong. So the weakness is that many candidates could not interpret the given vector ratio correctly. And 2 is that some candidates fail to state the correct root. So when the root is wrong, then even the substitution and answer will be wrong. So the advice that teachers should emphasize vector ratios and linear relationships of vectors to the learners. So that was section A. Remember, section A has 10 questions each week carrying for 4 marks, and now we shall go to section B. Section B has 12 has 7 questions, and each question has 12 marks, and the student is expected to attempt any 5 out of the 7. But for the sake of revision, we are going to answer all the 7 questions in this video. But when you're studying for your exam of UNEB, remember to attempt only and only 5 in section B. So we shall now start with question 11. So question 11 says, two functions f and h are defined as fx, which is x squared minus 1, and hx, which is x plus 3. Roman 1, find the inverse of f3. And this symbol means inverse. Then Roman 2, they said find the value of x if hfx is equal to fhx. So note the order is very, very vital. So you start with Roman 1, where they wanted the inverse of f3. For you to get the inverse of f3, you have to first get the inverse of fx. So first of all, you have fx. Now to get the inverse, we are going to first let. So I'll come and say that let capital Y be equal to capital X squared minus 1. Now where are they coming from? So where there is fx, you replace it with capital Y. Remember, capital letters. And this side where there is small x, you replace it with capital X. So always remember that. You replace small letters with capital letters. And after that, you have to look for ways of making capital X the subject. So for me to make capital X the subject, I'm going to first take this negative 1 this side to come up with y plus 1 equal to y plus 1 is equal to x, capital X squared. The next is to put square root on both sides to come up with x being equal to square root of y plus 1. So now that I've made capital X the subject, I can now set the inverse of fx. Remember, so how do we say the inverse? It means that capital X will become our inverse of fx, and this side capital Y will be replaced by small x. So in the end, I'll come up with my inverse of fx. But remember, they told us to get the inverse of f3, meaning that x is equal to 3. Therefore, come here and substitute for 3. Where there is x, I'll put there 3. And when I use the calculator, for example, 3 plus 1 is equal to 4. Therefore, square root of 4 will be equal to plus or minus 2. Note that word, plus or minus 2. So that was Roman 1. Now let's go to Roman 2. So Roman 2 says that find the value of x if hfx is equal to fhx. So we are going to first find out what hfx is and what fhx is. So hfx means that where there is x here, you replace it with this x here will be replaced by the whole of this to come up with x squared minus 1 then plus this 3. So let's first do that. So come in here, so that hfx means that where there is x, you replace it with fx. So we'll come up with x squared minus 1 plus 3. When I open brackets, I'll come up with x squared plus 2. Okay, what about fhx? So fhx means that where there is x in f, you replace it with x plus 3. So in the end, you shall come up with x plus 3, everything squared, minus 1. So you come and substitute where there is x, you shall put there x plus 3 and come up with x plus 3 everything squared minus 1. So when I open brackets, I'll come up with x squared plus 6x plus 9 minus 1. So when I collect like terms, I'll come up with x squared plus 6x plus 8. But remember, they told us that these two are equal, so we are going to equate the two, bring this one here and also bring this one here and equate the two. Next is to simplify. So if you look at this x squared and this x squared are the same, so they cancel to remain with 2 equal to 6x plus 8. Next is to take this 8 this side to come up with 2 minus 8 equal to 6x. Then this minus this will give me negative 6 being equal to 6x. And when I divide both sides by 6, I come up with x being equal to negative 1. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So we shall start with Roman 1. For Roman 1, M1 will be for letting, another M1 for the square root, another A1 for the inverse function. Then M1 for substituting into the inverse function, and A1 for both values of inverse of F3. So note it is both values plus or minus 2. So that was Roman 1. What about Roman 2? So for Roman 2, M1 was this substitution and A1 for this output. M1 was this substitution and A1 was this output. M1 for equating, M1 for collecting like terms, and A1 for the value of x. So this question was on functions and required the candidates to have knowledge of inverse function and composite functions. The question was popular and well done. However, some candidates lacked knowledge of composite functions. So that part B, or Roman 2, where they said hfx equal to fhx. Some candidates could not know what hfx means and fhx means. Then 2, those who managed to realize that they could not. So but for Roman 1, many candidates failed to obtain the required 2 roots of the number of plus or minus 2. So Roman 1, most candidates got positive 2 and stopped there, yet it's supposed to be plus or minus 2. So advice to teachers that teachers should emphasize composite functions because they're common, and also they should show learners that the square root of a number gives 2 values, plus or minus, so that students don't miss that accuracy mark. Okay, so that was question 11. Now we shall go to question 12. Question 12 says, at a workshop of 150 teachers, it was found that 58 drank juice, 66 drank water, and 57 drank soda. 10 drank water and juice, 11 drank juice and soda, and 13 drank water and soda. Some of the teachers drank all the 3 types of drinks. All teachers drank at least one of the drinks. So we shall see what each means. Part A, show this information on a Venn diagram. Part B, find the number of teachers who drank all the 3 types of drinks. And part C, what is the probability that a teacher chosen at random did not drink water? Know that word, did not drink water. So we are going to start with part A. So part A, we need to first get the intersection of all, which is those who drank all the 3 drinks. So juice, water, and soda, let it be X. Therefore, we shall now represent them on the Venn diagram. So we have to draw 3 circles, one for J, one for W, and one for S. After that, we shall go and feed in the information given. So for the first one, we are told that the workshop has 150 teachers. What does that mean? It means that all the total must add up to 150. So we shall come here and say that n of that universal will be equal to 150. The next we are told that 58 drank juice, 66 drank water, and 57 drank soda. So we shall come and represent those ones also. So we shall say that NJ, which is N juice, number of those who drank juice, will be 58, and those who drank water is 66, and those who drank soda are 57. After that we shall put this one of those who drank all the three types. Then from there we shall go ahead and answer feeding this one. So they told us that 10 drank water and juice, 11 drank juice and soda, 13 drank water and soda. So we shall feed them in the same order. So we shall start with 10. So 10 drank water and juice, but remember already x is here, meaning that this part alone will have 10 minus x. Then 11 drank juice and soda, but already x is here, so this will be 11 minus x. Then 13 drank water and soda, but already x is here, so this side will be 13 minus x. So that's the information. Okay, there's one more information which was given. So another information given is this one, that all teachers drank at least one of the drinks. What does that mean? It means that all the teachers drank at least one. There's no teacher who didn't drink any. That means that here outside it will be 0. So this 0 is very vital. That we need to also get these values in here. So it will be A, let this one be B, and let this one be C. So we have to get the values of A, B, and C in terms of x. So how do we do that? So we shall start with NJ. So the whole of this set for J, we have to add up A plus this plus this plus this to come up with 58. So the whole of this will be equal to 58. When we simplify, we shall come up with A plus 21 equal to A plus 21 minus x equal to 58. And when I make A the subject, I'll come up with A being equal to 37 plus x. So that was for J. What about for W? So W, we add up all these values. So this plus this plus this plus this will be equal to 66. Therefore, you come and add all these ones, and when you simplify, you come up with B plus 23 minus x is equal to 66. So when I make B the subject, B will be equal to 43 plus x. What about for soda? So soda, you have to add up all these values. So this plus this plus this plus this will be equal to that. So when I simplify, I'll come up with C plus 24 minus x being equal to 57. So when I mix the subjects, it will be equal to 33 plus x. So now that we have filled in all the spaces in the Venn diagram, we can go to the next part. But we go to the next part, let's see how much can be awarded in this part A. So B1 for the entry of this x minus 10, another B1 for the entry of this 11 minus x, and this one for the entry of 13 minus x. Then this B1 for you to get this one entry for A, which is 37 plus x, and it's supposed to be here. Another B1 to get the entry of 43 plus x, which is supposed to be here. Another B1 for getting the entry of 33 plus x, which is supposed to be here. Then another B1, the last B1 will be for all the rest of the entries. There is this entry, there is this entry, there is this entry, there is this entry, and there is this entry, and that's all those ones had one mark, which is a B1. So now that I've got that, the next is to go to part B, where they want the number of teachers who drink all the three types of drinks. we shall know that the total universal will be equal to 150. So we shall come and add all those ones. So where are these values coming from? So those values, this 150 is for all these values inside, but the good thing, we know that the whole of these values add up to 58. So all those ones add up to 58, then the remaining one will be b plus this plus this plus 0. So when I do that, I'll be able to get 150. So that is the reason why here I'm putting that the total will be 58 plus b plus c plus 13 minus x plus 0 to give you 150. So next is to substitute for b and c in terms of x, come up with that, then simplify to come up with 147 plus x being equal to 150. Therefore x will be equal to 3. So basically that's what they wanted for part B. Number of teachers would take all the 3 types of drinks. Now we shall go to part C. But before we go to part C, we can first feed in our values, because now we have got the value of x, so we can feed in our set without unknowns now. Okay, so that is it. So now they wanted the probability that teachers chosen at random did not take water, does not take water. What does that mean? It means that W complement, meaning these ones must not be included. Therefore, the remaining ones will be this plus this plus this plus this. So when you do that, we shall be able to get the number of teachers who do not take water. So probably the teachers chosen did not take water. Number of those who did not take water will be equal to 40 plus 8 plus 36 plus 0 to give you 84. So there are 2 ways of getting teachers who did not take water. One is that method which we have done. Another one is subtraction. So this is addition. Another method is subtraction. So how is subtraction done? For subtraction, you get the total number of teachers and also get the number of teachers who take water. Now when you subtract the 2, you'll be able to get those who do not take water. So for example, those who do not take water, we can say 150 minus 66, still you get the same very value you got at first. So any of the 2 is okay. But remember, they ask for probabilities. So we shall come and say that probability which is required will be equal to the number of teachers who did not take water over the total, which is 150. So it is okay to leave it like that or to reduce, but in order to avoid getting a wrong answer, it is better you leave it like that without reducing it. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this substitution, A1 for the value of x, M1 for addition and output, so getting this value, this M1 for this numerator, and A1 for stating the whole quotient. So the question was about sets and logic, and it required the candidates to represent the given information on a Venn diagram and use it to determine the members in all regions. It also required the candidates to determine the probability of a given region. The question was popular and generally well done. However, some candidates failed to differentiate between intersection of 2 sets and intersection of 2 sets only. So this word only, most candidates, what they did, let's see what they did. So what these candidates did here, instead of the whole of this being equal to 10, they put 10 here, and that was not okay. And also instead of this one being, the whole of this being 11, they put 11 here alone, and instead of the whole of this being equal to 13, they put 13 here alone. So that made them to get wrong values. Then others failed to determine the probability. Remember, probability is event over sample space. Then advice to teachers is that teachers should put more emphasis on the complements of sets. So candidates could not know the complements. So now we shall go to question 13, and part A says a car driver covered a distance of 60 kilometers at 100 kilometers per hour. A lorry driver covered the same distance but took half an hour more. Know that word, half an hour more, that is 30 minutes. Calculate Roman 1 the time taken by the lorry driver, and Roman 2 the average speed of the lorry. Then part B says that the traffic police patrol car traveling at 120 kilometers per hour is chasing a taxi 0.5 kilometers away and traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. How far must the police patrol car travel in order to catch up with the taxi? So Roman 1 shall say that the time taken by the car driver will be equal to distance over speed. So the distance was 60 kilometers and the speed was 100. Therefore it will be 0.6 hours. Therefore the time taken by the lorry, remember they told us that the lorry, if you look at this, they told us that the lorry covered the same distance but took a half an hour more. Half an hour more means that this one we have already seen that it took 0.6 hours, then this one will take 0.5 hours more, meaning that the total time taken will be 0.6 plus 0.5. So shall come and say that the time taken by the lorry driver will be 0.6 plus 0.5 to come up with 1.1 hours. Then Roman 2, so that was Roman 1, they wanted the time taken by the lorry driver. Then Roman 2, they said calculate the average speed of the lorry driver. Remember, average speed is equal to total distance over total time. So you come here and say that average speed of the lorry driver is equal to total distance over total time, which is total distance was 60 and total time was 1.1. So when I use a calculator, I'll come up with the average speed being equal to 54.545 kilometers per hour. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see in part A, and let's see how marks can be awarded. So B1 for substitution, and so B1 for getting this time for the car driver, and M1 for addition, A1 for output, M1 for division, and A1 for output. So now shall go to part B. They said the traffic police patrol car traveling at 120 kilometers per hour is chasing a taxi 0.5 kilometers away and traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. So the taxi is traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. How far must the police patrol car travel in order to catch up with the taxi? So the distance between the patrol car and the taxi is 0.5 kilometers. Another, the taxi is 0.5 kilometers ahead of the patrol car. So here we shall say that let x be the distance traveled by the police patrol car. That means that the time taken by the police patrol car will be equal to distance over time, over speed, and the distance was x, as we have said here, and the speed was 120 kilometers per hour. So that will be the time taken by the police patrol car. For the taxi, the time taken will be equal to distance over speed, but the distance will now be x minus 0.5 because the taxi was already 0.5 kilometers ahead of the patrol car. So if the patrol car covered x kilometers, you know that this taxi will have covered x minus 0.5 kilometers over the speed. So the speed of the taxi was 100 kilometers per hour. Now here the condition we should remember is that when the patrol car catches up with the taxi, both will have traveled for the same time. Why? Because they start at the same time, and the patrol car overtakes the taxi after the same time. So that means that the time taken by the taxi to travel is the same time taken by the patrol car to travel. So if these two times are the same, it means that we are going to equate this with that. So when we equate, we shall come up with that. I think realize that we have formed an equation with only one unknown. So the next thing to do is to simplify and make x the subject. So the first thing to do will be cross multiplying. So this with this will give you 100x, and this with this will give you 120 multiplied by, in brackets, x minus 0.5. So when I open brackets, I come up with this side 120x minus 60. When I take x the other side, I'll come up with 100x minus 120x is equal to 60. Therefore, negative 20x is equal to negative 60. So here it was supposed to be negative because of this. So this here it has to be also here. So when I divide both sides by negative 20, I'll come up with x being equal to 3 kilometers. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for the time taken by the patrol, B1 for time taken by taxi, M1 for equating, M1 for cross multiplying, M1 for collecting like terms, M1 for division, and A1 for output. So the question was about kinematics, and it required the candidates to calculate time, average speed, and distance. The question was very unpopular and poorly done. So unpopular means that it rarely appears in UNEB past papers. So the reason is that some candidates mixed units of distance and time. So units, you must be careful with them. Candidates also exhibited lack of knowledge on relationships between distance, time, and speed. So the formula relating distance, time, and speed, remember speed is equal to distance over time, and that formula was misquoted by students. So advice to teachers that teachers should emphasize both graphic and calculation method by solving problems in kinematics, because most students were conversant with graphic method, but this time they wanted you to calculate. So teachers should emphasize uniform units. So units must be uniform. If time is hours, it should be hours throughout. If distance is kilometers, it should be kilometers throughout, like that. So that was question 13. Now shall go to question 14. Question 14 says, the table below shows the tax structure on taxable income of public servants working in a certain country. So this is a table, and they said a man's gross annual income. So note this word gross and annual. Annual means per year. Gross annual income is 6.46 million. His allowances are as follows. Housing is shillings 125,000 per month. So this is per month. This was annual, per year. So you should take note of that. Then marriage, it was at 1/10 of his gross annual income. Medical allowance is shillings 354,000 per annum. So per annum means per year. Transport is shillings 60,000 per month. So I think we realize that they have mixed two things. per year and per month. So as you're calculating, you must differentiate the two so that they are all uniform. So family, we are still continuing with allowances. So family allowances per annum for only 3 children are as follows. So shillings 25,000 for each child between 10 and 18 years. Then shillings 32,000 for each child below 9 years. He has to pay an insurance premium of shillings 48,900 per annum. He has 4 children with 2 of them below 8 years. One is 16 years and the oldest is 20 years. Calculate Part A his taxable income and Part B income tax paid annually. So first of all, this question is easily done when you tabulate. It looks organized and neat. So we are going to tabulate. First we have put a column for all the items which contain of the allowances. So all those were the allowances. Now the next column will be for the working. So some of them need working. So housing, if you look at this, housing, it was 125,000 per month. So that means that per year it has to be multiplied by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. This one, marriage, it was 1/10 of gross income, so it will be 1/10 or multiplied by this gross income, which is 6.46 million. And this medical is already per annum, so there is no need to calculate anything because it's already per year. But transport is per month, so we have to multiply 60 by 12 to get per year. So let's first do those calculations. So for housing, it is 125,000 times 12. For marriage, it was 1/10 multiplied by the gross annual income, which is 6.46 million. For medical, there is no need to calculate because it was already per year. But for transport, it was 60,000 per month, so we have to multiply by 12. Now, when we go to children, they say the allowances are for they give allowances for 3 children. So when you look at this, let's first analyze these children. So the family allowance per annum for only 3 children. So they give allowances for 3 children, but this man has 4 children with 2 of them below 8 years. Now that we have 2 below 8 years. One is 16 years old and the oldest is 20 years. So if you look at this, the allowances, we have shillings 25,000 for each child between 10 and 18. So if you look at his children, there is this child with 16 years, so meaning that this child will be given an allowance of 25,000 shillings for this child who is 16 years. Then this one who is 20 does not qualify for any allowance because is outside these 2 age brackets. But these other 2, which are 8 years, they qualify because here there's an allowance of 32,000 shillings for each child below 9 years. So because there are 2, we shall multiply 2 by this 32,000 to get the allowance for these 2 children. So in total, we have 2 times 32 plus 25,000. So let's write that allowance. So that is why here I say that 2 times 32,000 plus 25,000. Then lastly is premium, so which does not need calculation. So these others don't need calculation. The ones which are blank, they don't need any working because they were already per annum. For example, if you look at this premier insurance, he has to pay an insurance premium of shillings this per annum, so it's already per year. So next is now to simplify. So when I simplify housing, multiply that, I'll come up with shillings 1.5 million, and this one I'll come up with shillings 646,000, and this one is shillings 354,000. This one is shillings 720,000. This one is shillings 89,000, and this one is shillings 48,900. So when I add all these total allowances, I'll come up with shillings 3,357,900. So that is the total of all the allowances. Therefore, the taxable income, we have to first subtract off all those allowances. So that means that this gross minus this to come up with the taxable income. So the taxable income will be shillings 3,102,100 shillings. So basically that was part A. So let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for housing or transport. So this one or that is B1. This one for marriage, another B1 for family, another M1 for addition, so adding all these ones, and A1 for output, which is that. Then M1 for subtraction, A1 for output. So that means that these 2 marks, when we see this value, those 2 marks of M1, A1 will be given. So now that you have got the taxable income, we can go back and get the income tax paid. So for the income tax paid, you have to remember the structure. So taxable income, the first, remember we are given this structure. Let's first look at it. There is this structure which we are given. Now, the taxable income was in 3 million something, so that means that it will stop at this point. It will stop somewhere in between here. So that means that this one will not be needed. So the first 1.2 million is this, has this percentage. The next 1.2 million has this percentage. Now for this point, we shall need to subtract, we shall need to get the taxable income minus this to get the one which will be taxed. So we shall see that as we are doing the calculation, and that percentage was 36.5. So we have to remember these percentages because they are the ones we are going to use in our calculation. So let's go ahead. So for the first 1.2 million, then we also have the next 1.2 million, and lastly the next that, because we have to subtract. For example, we have to subtract, you have to say this 3,102,100 shillings minus 2.4 million. To when you do that, you'll be able to come up with that last value, which is 702,100 shillings. So that's where it's coming from. Now from the structure, we saw the percentages. So the working, we will need the percentages. So for the first 1.2 million, the percentage was 12.5. So the calculation would be 12.5 over 100 multiplied by this. Then for the next, the percentage was 30, so 30 over 100 multiplied by that. The next percentage was 36.5, so 36.5 over 100 times that. So that is the working. Now next we need the column for the tax paid. So tax paid means that we have to use a calculator to get this value, so that value will be 150,000, and this value will be 360,000, and this value will be 256,266.5. So next is to use the calculator and add up all these values. So when I add up, I'll come up with 766,266.5. So that is the total tax paid. Therefore, I'll come and conclude that my income tax paid annually will be equal to shillings 766,266.5. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how the marks could be awarded. So M1 for the whole of this row, B1 for the whole of that row, B1 for the whole of that row, B1 for the whole of this row. Now M1 A1 is for this value, so adding all these values and setting the output, that is where the 2 marks are coming from. So the question was on business mathematics, and it required the candidates to calculate annual taxable income. Know that word, annual taxable income, and income tax for a public servant. The question was popular and fairly done. So weaknesses that candidates had problems of converting allowances from annual to monthly and vice versa. They also failed to identify insurance premium as an allowance. So that word insurance premium disturbed students because it was not popular. It was not a popular part of allowance which was coming in the previous years, so it over-disturbed students. But from now on, as you are going to prepare for exam, in case it comes back, just remember that this will be an allowance. So advice to teachers, that teachers should teach learners both annual and monthly taxation of incomes of employees. Then 2, they should emphasize clear distinction between taxable income and income tax. So those 2 words seem to be a little similar, but they are very different. Taxable income is different from income tax. Taxable income is the income from which the tax will be deducted, and income tax is the tax which you pay. So that was question 15. Now that was question 14. Now we shall go to question 15. And question 15 says the cost, capital C, of operating a day school for a 1 day is partly constant. Know that word, partly constant, and partly varies as the number of students, small n. Partial variation. So it costs shillings 40,000 to run a school, the school when there are 500 students, and shillings 64,000 when there are 900 students. Form an equation for the cost C and the number of students n. That was part A. Then part B, what would be the cost of running the school when there are 700 students? That was part B. Now part C, if the cost of running the school is shillings 82,000 per day, how many students are in the school? Okay, so we shall start with part A. Remember they told us C partly varies as a constant and also is partly constant and partly varies as the number of students n. So what does that mean? So it means that C will be equal to K1 plus K2n, where K1 and K2 are constants. So in this case, after writing that, remember they want a relationship between C and N, but we have to remove these constants. We are the ones who have put them, so you have to look for them. So for you to get the values of these constants, you use the information given. If you look at this question, you realize that they told us it costs shillings 40,000 to run a school when there are 500 students. What does that mean? It means that when C is 40,000, N will be 500. Therefore, we shall come here and substitute that when C is 40,000, N is 500. So let's substitute for C and N to come up with only two unknowns, to come up with an equation having K1 and K2. So that is equation 1. Then we also need the equation 2. So equation 2 will come from still the statement or the question. They told us here that and shillings 64,000 when there are 900 students. What does that mean? It means that when C is 64,000, N will be 900. So when we come here and substitute, we know that C is 64,000, N is 900, so we shall come and substitute still here. C will put 64,000 and N will put 900. So now we realize that we have two equations and two unknowns. So what should come in your mind is that these will be solved simultaneously. So if you look at this, the good thing that this is K1 and also this is K1, so we can subtract. Now what we are going to do is I'll say equation 2 minus equation 1. So what does that give? So equation 2 is this and equation 1 is this. So when we subtract, this is what is going to happen. So we subtract term by term. So 64,000 minus 40,000, you come up with 24,000. K1 minus K1 is 0, that's why there is no K1 here. Then 900 K1, K2 minus 500 K2 will give you 400 K2. So in the end we have 24,000 being equal to 400 K2. So this is one unknown. The next thing to do is to divide both sides by 400. So when you do that, you shall come up with K2 being equal to 60. So now that we know K2, we can use either equation 1 or equation 2 to come up with the value of K1. Now let's use equation 1. So when I use equation 1, I'll come and substitute for K2 here, and I remain with only K1 as the only unknown, which is this. So next is to collect like terms. So this times this is 30,000, and when I take this one this side, I'll come up with K1 being equal to 40,000 minus 30,000, and then I'll come up with K1 being equal to 10,000. So now that I've got the unknowns K1 and K2, I'll come and substitute for K1 and for K2 to get the required equation. Therefore, C will be equal to 10,000 plus 60n. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded for this part. So B1 for the equation formed, another B1 for equation 1, and B1 for equation 2, M1 for subtraction, A1 for the value of K2, M1 for substitution, A1 for the value of K1, and B1 for equation with constants substituted. So now that we have got the equation of rating C and N, we can go ahead and answer parts B and C. So when you look at this question, part B, they said, what would be the cost of running a school when there are 700 students? So in other words, they want the value of C when N is 700, and part C, they said, if the cost of running a school is shillings 82,000 per day, how many students are there in the school? What that means that they want the value of N when C is 82,000. So let's do those two parts. So you start with part B and say that when N is 700, you shall come and substitute for N and remain with only C as an only unknown. So next is simplify and get the output, and that's what they wanted in part B. Then for part C, when C is 82,000, we shall come and substitute for C and then collect like terms, and after that we shall simplify. Then we divide both sides 2 by 6 to make n the subject. Therefore n is equal to 1,200 students. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for substituting, A1 for output, M1 for substituting here, and A1 for output. So the question was on numerical concepts over in, or can call it variation, and it required the candidates to form an equation connecting two variables and use the equation to solve the given problem. The question was popular and well done. The weakness is that some candidates failed to relate the two variables to form an equation. Then advised that teachers should teach all forms of variations to learners and expose them to enough practice. So that was question 15. Now we shall go to question 16. So question 16 says the position vectors of points P, Q, and R are these ones. So this is position vector for P, for Q, and for R. M is a point so that OM is equal to X or Q, and OM is a point, and OM is equal to OP plus YPR. Determine part A, the vector PR, part B, values of X and Y, and part C, position vector of OM. So we shall start with part A. So part A, they wanted vector PR. So PR is equal to OP OR minus OP. Therefore, we know that OR is that and OP is this. Therefore, when I subtract, -1 minus -3 is the same as -1 plus 3 to come up with +2. Then 9 minus -5 is the same as 9 plus 5 to come up with 14. So that was part A. Now part B, we know that OM is equal to X or Q. Now OQ is equal to -7 and -1. Therefore OM in terms of X is equal to that. What about OM in terms of Y? So OM in terms of Y is OP plus YPR. So OP is this and PR is that. So next I have to equate the two because both of them are equal to OM. So because they're equal to OM, I'll equate the two and I'll come up with, so this one gives me this and this one gives me that. So next is to use equality. So this is equal to this plus that to come up with that line. Therefore I'll come up with that equation 1. Then equating the other one, I'll come up with this equal to this plus that, which is that. So when I simplify, I'll come up with equation 2, which is that. So these are two equations and two unknowns, so I can solve them simultaneously. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the method of substitution because I already have X here. So I'll put X in this equation 1 to come up with only one unknown, which is Y. So when I do that, I'll come up with that line. And I think you realize that I have only one unknown. When I open brackets, I'll come up with 35 minus 98Y plus 2Y equal to 3. Then when I simplify, -98 plus 2 will be equal to -96. Then next is take this one this side to come up with -32, divide both sides by -96 to come up with Y is equal to a third. Now to get the value of X, I'll come and substitute for Y in that equation 2. So I'll come and here and say that from equation 2, X will be equal to that. So where there is Y, I put there 1/3. So when I use a calculator, I'll come up with X being equal to 1/3. So basically those are the values they wanted. They want the value of X and Y in part B. Now for part C, they want the position vector of M. So OM is equal to Q x OQ. So x is 1 over 3 and OQ is that. Therefore, the vector will be negative 7 over 3 I, okay, negative 7 over 3 and negative 1 over 3. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So for part A, B1 is for root, so B1 for this root, M1 for substitution, and A1 for the output. Then here for part B, B1 is for OM in terms of X, and this another B1 is for OM in terms of Y. Then M1 is for equating the two. Then M1 is for both equations 1 and 2, both equation 1 and equation 2. Then M1 is for substitution, and A1 is for the value of Y, A1 for the value of X, M1 for substitution here, and A1 for the value of M. So what does that mean? It means that when they ask for the position vector of M, you don't stop at this point. You have to multiply this scalar by each term inside the vector. So the question was on vectors, and it required candidates to determine the required displacement vector, values of given scalars, and a position vector. The question was not popular and poorly done. So not popular meaning that it rarely appears in the previous past papers, and poorly done means that most of the candidates who attempted it, very few got it correct. So the weakness is that some candidates failed to determine the correct root of PR. So knowing that PR is equal to OR minus OP was the challenge. Most students were saying OP minus OR. Then other candidates failed to equate the two roots of OM to determine the scalars of X and Y. So there's no way you can get those scalars without equating the two vectors. So advice to teachers that teachers should emphasize position vectors, displacement vectors to learners. So those two vectors are different. Displacement vectors and position vectors are different. Then more practice is needed on vectors. So students must practice more on vectors in order to get correct answers for a question on vectors, on vector geometry. So now we shall go to question 17. Question 17 says the figure below represents a tent in the form of a triangular prism ABCDEF. So that is it. BC is 1.5 meters and CD is 3 meters. And the slanting edges are 2 meters long. Calculate the part A height of the tent AP, then part B angle between the lines BC and AC, then part C angle between the planes ABFE and ACDE, then part D angle between the line CE and the base BCDF. So we shall start with part A. So part A, they want the height of the tent AP. So they want this height. So such questions are easily done by making sketches of triangles. So in this case, the whole of BC was 1.5, so you divide it into 2 to come up with 0.75 and 0.75 this side. Why? Because these two are equal, meaning that it's an isosceles triangle. Therefore, these two angles are the same. Therefore, I can easily get this AP which is needed. So by Pythagoras theory, for triangle APC, you realize that AP squared, this one is equal to the hypotenuse, which is AC squared minus CP squared. So when I substitute, I'll come up with AP squared being equal to 2 squared minus 0.75 squared. Therefore, AP is equal to square root of 3.4375 to come up with 1.85 meters. So that was AP. Now let's go to part B. So part B, they say they find the angle between the lines BC and SC. Angle between the lines BC and SC. So if you look at that, the angle between these two lines, between this line and this line, will be this. So that means that this theta is the angle they want. So you come here and say that still using that same triangle, cos theta will be equal to, remember, cos is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I use cos theta, I will use this adjacent, which is 0.75, and hypotenuse is 2 meters. Therefore, I'll come and substitute cos theta is equal to 0.75 over 2. Therefore, theta will be equal to 67.98 degrees. So use two decimal places. So that was part B. Now part C, they said calculate the angle between the planes ABFE and SCDE. So there is ABFE and SCDE. So we can try to shade that part, those two planes. So if I shade, this is what we are going to come up with. So there is ABFE, which is that, and then there is also SCDE. So when you associate that, I'll come up with that part, which is SCDE. So if you realize, you realize that the angle they want is this angle. So because these are the two planes, so the angle they want is that. So we shall go back and try to draw that, try to get that angle. So that angle still goes from this triangle, and that is alpha. So we still say that for triangle ABC, we realize that alpha, all these three angles add up to 180. So alpha plus theta add up to 180. Therefore, come and substitute for theta and make alpha the subject. So alpha will be equal to 44.04 degrees. So basically that's what they wanted in part C. So before we go to part D, let's see the maths for this part. So for part A, M1 for substitution and A1 for output. At least two decimal places. So it is better you use two decimal places in such questions, or in Olevel. So M1 for substitution, that is part B now, A1 for output. So when it comes to angles, one decimal point is allowed. Then when it comes to part C, B1 for identifying the angle, so the sketch, and then M1 for substituting and A1 for output. So that was part A, B, and C. So now we are going to part D. Part D, they say they want the angle between the lines CE and the base, B, C, D, F. So let's first remove this we had shaded, and so that you can see those lines. So there is line CE is there, then the base is B, C, D, F. So I think it's better if we shade. So if we shade, we shall come up with that. So this is the base B, C, D, E with the one shaded here. Now the line CE is this one in red. So what you're going to do, you are going to extract out a right angle triangle, which is CQE. and that's that triangle is right angled at Q. So let's draw that triangle. So for you to get that, first of all you have to get the length of CE. So that's what we are trying to get. So let's first get CE. So for CE we shall say that this is a rectangle triangle. So CE is equal to CD squared plus DE squared. Therefore when I substitute, I'll come up with that. Therefore CE will be equal to 3.61 meters. Now that I've known CE, I can now extract the triangle I want, which is CQE. So CQE, and this is the angle they want between the line and the base. Therefore, I have the hypotenuse and I have the opposite, meaning I'll use sine. So come and say sine beta is equal to QE over CE. When I substitute, I come up with that. Therefore, beta will be 30.83. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for substitution, A1 for output, B1 for identifying, so to draw this triangle, then M1 for substitution and A1 for output. So this question was on three-dimensional geometry and required candidates to calculate length, angle between two lines, two planes, and line and a plane. The question was not popular and was poorly done. So it was not popular to have such a shape in three-dimensional geometry. So weakness is that many candidates could not identify right angles, the correct angles, and application of Pythagoras theory. So right angles means the 90s, and the application of Pythagoras theory was a challenge to many. The knowledge of trigonometric ratios was necessary, but many candidates lacked the concepts. So identifying the opposite adjacent hypotenuse and using the SOHCAHTOA, it was not easy for candidates. So advise that teachers should emphasize identification of right angles, identification of 90 degrees, and the application of Pythagoras theory. Then trigonometric ratios and application of models in three-dimensional geometry are essential for learners to do better in this topic. Remember, I think we already talked about it in section A, that three-dimensional geometry requires models. So even questions in section B require models for you to answer them on geometry, on three-dimensional geometry. So basically those are the 17 questions in this paper for UNEB 2018. And now let's look at this brief summary for the paper. So the paper comprised of two sections, A and B. Section A had 10 compulsory questions and short questions, while section B has 7 extended answer questions and candidates answers only 5 questions. I think I've already told you that. So the questions were drawn from the topics. So these are the topics: numerical concepts, set theory, functions, graphs, vectors, three-dimensional geometry, and business mathematics. So always exams for UNEB paper 2 will come from these 7 topics. So the paper was of the same difficulty as that of the previous year, which is 2017, and the time of 2.5 hours allocated for the paper was adequate. So this is the summary of the well done questions and poorly done questions, most attempted questions, and least attempted questions. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and be reminded that the next video will be on UNEB 2017 of Math Paper 1. So if you have not yet subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below this video so that you can receive updates when the next video on UNEB 2017 of Math Paper 1 is uploaded. Also, if you know of any student who is not yet on this platform, please share the link of this video with them via social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, so that you can all benefit as a family.